Swethoma kabono. Udopepi wakho sikhulu yahula walamata ukutisisa na inya Afrika. Yanisaphula. Yafeja komelelo. Lemeko. Letoyo. Lulike jawula yazidodona. Ulika uzomulaya. Lobe kanaka kitsi. Awumijwa ke moya waphendulelo. Ogaba abantu kubiwa ke mata kusikolo. Ubazi yathumba uzawubisa usiyo.
Hello everyone, welcome back to ASR, African Stories Realized. This is our recap of Queen Modjadji Season 1. The historical drama follows the story of a matriarchal dynasty whose ability to summon the rain made the Balobedu royalty among the most revered of the African dynasties. Born to the throne and blessed with the elemental ancestral gift, Queen Modjadji's reign gave rise to a succession of hereditary queens. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Episode 1 begins with an introduction to the Dzugudini settlement in sub-Saharan Africa, 1780. A 7-year drought has brought famine upon the land, forcing the people to forage for water and food. The Balobedu people's faith in their ancestors and their king, Mambo's ability to make it rain again, began to dwindle. The desperation reached its peak when King Mambo caught some of his sons trying to hunt a warthog, something the culture forbids because it's their totem. King Mambo then tried making another passionate plea to the ancestors for rain, but failed again, even suggesting that maybe the ancestors want to be appeased with a human sacrifice. The king seer, Mpabanchi, then came to him with a prophecy that his 10 sons were plotting to overthrow him and kill him, suggesting that the ancestors may want balance to be restored, for the tribe to be led by women as it once was under their first leader, Dzugudini. The following day at the tribal council, King Mambo confronted the royal council and his sons, threatening them all with death for their treachery. After the council meeting, it was confirmed that the sons, including the youngest, barely 10 years old, indeed had a plan to kill their father. However, when nightfall came, Mambo executed all his sons in a bloody slaughter. Mambo's youngest daughter, Dzugudini, who had witnessed the carnage, rushed to one of his wife's huts to report what she had seen, only to find that the wife had just given birth to a son. She handed the baby to Dzugudini, instructing her to take the baby to the Bapedi tribe, where they'll keep him safe. The morning after the brutal slaughter, they reported to King Mambo that the baby was stillborn. With no rain forthcoming, Mambo began his descent into madness. His seer returned to him with another prophecy, that the king's daughter, Kaele, was destined to bear a new queen who would bring back the rain and begin a new reign of queens. However, he would have to sleep with his own daughter to conceive the child. Mambo not only balked at the thought of sleeping with his favorite daughter, but he also didn't like the idea of reverting their tradition. Mpabanchi convinced the king that it was the ancestors' will for him to conceive a new heir with his daughter. However, King Mambo seemingly couldn't bring himself to sleeping with his favorite daughter. His workaround was instead to sleep with his youngest daughter, Dzugudini, convincing her aunt, Kadi, that it was the ancestors' will. Kadi went on to somehow convince Dzugudini to consent to the conception, despite her initially refusing. After the conception, Dzugudini was whisked away, where she stayed hidden for 9 months. Dzugudini eventually gave birth to a baby boy, meaning the prophecy wouldn't come to pass. King Mambo interrogated Mpabanchi about his failed prophecy, knowing very well that he didn't follow the instructions. The episode ends with King Mambo declaring that his newborn son must die. Episode 2 picks up after Mambo had ordered the death of his newborn son. Dzugudini tried to flee with her baby, but Mambo's henchmen caught up with her, snuffing the baby out to the screams of her mother. Meanwhile, Mpabanchi confronted Mambo, questioning if he followed the ancestors' instructions correctly. In an attempt to rectify his mistake, Mambo was then forced to ask his favorite daughter, Keale, which she immediately rejected in disgust. However, Mambo gave her some time to think it over, something he would regret later. After consoling a mourning Dzugudini, Kadikulu went to confront her brother about the failed prophecy, ultimately figuring out that Mambo defied the prophecy to spare his favorite daughter. Mambo insisted that he would rectify his error by sleeping with Keale. However, panic ensued when it was brought to Mambo's attention that Keale had fled in protest. He demanded that Khatikulu bring Dzugudini to him, but she refused, insisting the king must approach her himself. Little did Mambo know that Khatikulu had foreseen Keale's defiance and prepared Dzugudini to make demands of the king when he returned. Meanwhile, at the Bapedi royal settlement, were introduced to their king and his right-hand man, Patla, as they plot to raise Mambo's remaining son, Mamaila, as their own, so he can one day help them steal Mambo's kingdom. Back at the Mujini settlement, Mambo avoided going to see Dzugudini. However, Mbabanchi received another message from the ancestors, a two-headed snake, prompting him to confront his king once more about the failed prophecy. Mambo finally admitted to Mbabanchi that he knocked up the wrong daughter. Mbabanchi and Mambo immediately visited Dzugudini in an attempt to apologize and request her to answer the ancestors' call once more. Dzugudini negotiated for her mother's land and a prestigious seat in the Mambo's royal council. Despite Mambo's horror at his daughter's demands, Mbabanchi accepted on Mambo's behalf, and another conception ceremony followed. After an anxious wait, Dzugudini finally gave birth to a baby girl. However, she refused to hold her or feed her, declaring to her aunt that the baby was cursed and she won't raise her, even threatening to kill the baby. Khatikulu introduced baby Maselekwane to the ancestors as news reached Mambo that a queen had been born. Clouds began to darken as Mambo prepared for the impending rainfall. The episode ends with scenes of celebration as the rain finally came, ending an almost decade-long drought. However, Dzugudini carved a lonely figure in her hut, barely acknowledging the rain she sacrificed so much for. Episode 3 picks up with an 18-year time jump, as the once drought-ridden Mujini settlement has visibly been transformed by cycles of rainfall. We are then introduced to the Rain Queen, Maselekwane, on the eve of her 18th birthday. Meanwhile, Dzugudini visited Khatikulu in an attempt to find out how her daughter was doing and help prepare her for her 18th birthday and potential coronation. However, Khatikulu coldly shut her down, revealing that Dzugudini's sister, Keale, regularly stopped by to help prepare her. At a royal council meeting, Dzugudini confronted her father in front of the council for not living up to his promise, revealing he had failed to return her mother's land to her. However, Mambo was defiant, threatening them all and walking out on the council. Dzugudini was then visited by a mad wizard who stoked the fires of redemption in her. He instructed her to steal the sacred rain beads before Maselekwane's 18th birthday. They made a blood pact that he would be Dzugudini's advisor, and she quickly went on to steal the beads, which nobody noticed. Meanwhile, Khatikulu warned Maselekwane about the potential resistance she will face from the Royal Council of Men when her time to be queen comes. Mambo then called his final royal council, where he bid them farewell and prophesied that his death will bring many invaders from all directions. He also informed the royal council, to their dismay, that the next leader of their people would be a woman. On the day of Maselekwane's 18th birthday, she was crowned as the queen of her people. However, the episode ends with Mambo taking his own life in a death ritual. Episode 4 picks up after Mambo took his own life in a death ritual. Maselekwane was introduced to Mwali and other ancestors, including Dzugudini, the female founder of their tribe. Word quickly spread that the king was dead, with the royal council questioning who would replace him. Dzugudini immediately rushed to the Bapedi royal kraal, where we were introduced to the king's only remaining son, Mamaila, all grown up. Dzugudini, bowing to the young prince, reported to Mamaila and his Bapedi handlers that Mambo Mukoto was no more. Meanwhile, Mambo was given an honorable funeral and a cleansing commenced as the Lovedu people anticipated the coronation of their new leader. Khatikulu and Raisibe helped Maselekwane prepare for her big moment as they looked back with pride on the woman she had become. The festivities for the coronation began, with neighboring tribes arriving to celebrate Mambo Mukoto's successor. However, upon the revelation of Maselekwane as the first Rain Queen, the attendees of the coronation rejected being ruled by a woman. The episode ends with Mamaila arriving and announcing to everyone's shock that he is Mambo Mukoto's true heir. Episode 5 picks up after the Rain Queen's coronation was disrupted by Mamaila's claim for the Balobedi throne. Dzugudini confronted her aunt for lighting the royal flame for the new queen while her claim was being disputed. But Khatikulu reminded Dzugudini that the time of kings had passed. Mamaila's mother arrived with a bucket of water, determined to put the fire out. However, Kadikolo stopped her, insisting that only she had the right to put the flame out. The royal council then convened to assess the legibility of Mamaila's claim to the throne. The council argued for and against Mamaila's claim, with Kadikolo reminding them that Maselekwane's ascent to the throne was ordained by the ancestors. Some argued that Mamaila's emergence changed the prophecy somehow. Mamaila then won most of the council over when he questioned if a woman was capable of protecting their kingdom like he could. This forced Kadikolo to lay down a challenge, insisting that Mamaila must enter the Malekalo hut, which will be used to test his character and suitability for the throne, or kill him trying. If he exited the hut from the right door, it would mean his claim is legitimate. Dzugudini and Kadikolo then had a confrontation over Dzugudini's support for Mamaila, with Dzugudini insisting that no queen will ascend to the throne unless she approves it. Dzugudini later revealed to a confidant that she wanted the throne for herself, claiming that her support for Mamaila will only last until he's taught her the rainmaking ritual. Mamaila then had a moment with his adopted father, the king of the Bapedi, who reminded Mamaila of their ultimate goal, to combine the Bapedi and Balobedi kingdoms, creating one of the most formidable military forces ever seen. The Bapedi king then accompanied Mamaila to the Malekalo hut, where spectators and supporters had gathered. Mamaila then entered the Malekalo hut. However, to his dismay, the other door refused to open for him. His mother demanded that he was released, upon which he was arrested and taken to the mountain, where they planned to throw him to his death. Just as they were about to throw Mamaila off the mountain, Dzugudini arrived, demanding that Mamaila's captors release him immediately, after which she ordered Mamaila to kill Maselekwane. Following Mamaila's failure, the royal council convened and were all in agreement that the Rain Queen should be allowed to ascend to the throne as preparations for her first rainmaking ceremony began. An angry Dzugudini then arrived at the royal kraal, cursing out Kadikolo and the Rain Queen. After Dzugudini's tirade, Maselekwane questioned who she was, but Kadikolo and Raisibe refused to tell the young queen that Dzugudini was her mother. Maselekwane then went up the mountain to perform her first rainmaking ceremony. Like Mambo before her, she performed the rainmaking ritual, and after a slight delay, the rain finally came. Episode 6 picks up with Boke, the military leader, reporting that Mamaila had overpowered the royal guards and escaped. Boke then tried to assassinate the guards who failed to carry out orders, forcing them to reveal that Dzugudini was the one who intervened with Mamaila's execution. Boke and Kadikolo immediately went to confront Dzugudini for harboring the false king. Dzugudini was defiant, but her aunt warned her that her quest for revenge won't end well. Kadikolo and Boke then reported the news of Mamaila's escape to the royal council. Some of Mamaila's supporters in the royal council saw it as a sign that maybe Mamaila should be their king, but Kadikolo and the rest of the council once again reminded them of Mambo's final prophecy. Following the royal council meeting, Mamaila's supporters gathered in secret and reaffirmed their desire for a new king. We are then introduced to Dabedi, who will assume the role of the Rain Queen's keeper of secrets. However, Dabedi causes a rift between Maselekwane and her closest confidant, Raisibe, who she confronted for having an affair with Dabedi, despite promising that her heart would never be claimed by a man. The queen questioned whether Dabedi ever visited Raisibe, which she denied. However, in a flashback, it's revealed that she had been sneaking around with Dabedi, and that she had witnessed Dzugudini try kill Maselekwane when they were younger. Meanwhile, Dzugudini visited Mamaila and reminded him of their mission to take the throne. Mamaila suggested that he would invade with his Bapedi army, but Dzugudini warned him that he can't take the throne using a foreign army. Dzugudini then briefly crossed paths with Maselekwane, who was taking a walk in the forest. Luckily, Dabedi arrived before any danger fell upon the queen. Back at the settlement, Mamaila followed Raisibe with the belief that she'll lead him to the queen. However, Raisibe picked up that something was off and was able to deceive the false king. The following day, she dressed up like Maselekwane and led Mamaila to the mountain. Upon realizing he had been fooled, Mamaila cursed at Raisibe, vowing to kill the queen. However, the episode ends with a huge boulder rolling down the mountain, taking out Mamaila. Episode 7 picks up following Raisibe's triumph over Mamaila, who she believes to be dead. Dzugudini arrived at the site of Mamaila's supposed demise. However, Mamaila was not there, just his blood and his weapon. Raisibe followed Dzugudini, who met up with her co-conspirator, Tibule. She reported Mamaila's failure, forcing Tibule to wash his hands of her, warning her that the royal guard will be looking for her soon if they don't find Mamaila. Raisibe continued following Dzugudini and watched her as she plotted with Mamaila's supporters. She also led Raisibe to the hiding place of the stolen rainmaking beads. Meanwhile, A royal council meeting was held, where the council argued over the inclusion of a female in the royal council. After the royal council meeting, Maselekwane grew increasingly worried about Raisibe, but Raisibe finally returned, requesting that the queen come with her so she can show her what she'd uncovered. Raisibe and Maselekwane witnessed Dzugudini and Mamaila's biggest supporter, Mudiga, plotting against the queen. After Mudiga left, Maselekwane confronted her mother for her devious ways. Raisibe and Kadikolo then arrived with the royal guards and arrested Dzugudini. The following day, the royal council convened for Dzugudini's trial, where they all agreed to sentence her to death for her treason. However, the queen spared her mother, banishing her instead. While in captivity, Dzugudini escaped, raising alarm in the settlement. While they searched for the fugitive, news began to spread that Mamaila had met his fate at the jaws of a leopard. Kadikolo tried to gift him Maselekwane Mambo's dagger as a reminder of how close she came to death. However, Maselekwane rejected the gift, and to Kadikolo's shock, she declared that their ancestors will protect her. Meanwhile, at the Bapedi royal settlement, Mamaila's mother reported to his pregnant wife that he was no more, triggering her to go into labor. The episode ends with Mamaila's wife giving birth to his son and declared that he will pick up where his father left off. Episode 8 picks up with Queen Modjadji ditching her guardian so she can attend to some royal business. She paid a visit to Mambo's widows, masquerading as the queen's messenger, while Raisibe stood in her place. She extended an olive branch to the three widows, inviting them to move into the royal compound with her. Mambo's widows argued over a potential return to the royal compound before ultimately deciding to return. Meanwhile, the Bedi king, Mampuru, arrived with lavish gifts and a proposal of marriage for the Rain Queen. The king's proposal excited the royal council, however, it wasn't long before Maselekwane turned it down. The royal council grew increasingly concerned that the unmarried queen's line might end with her. Mudiga confronted Kadikolo, reminding her that it is custom for the royal council to choose the carrier of the new heir. After the failed proposal, Mudiga decided to take matters into his own hands, sending one of his men to go do the job. However, the man was caught by Dabedi and escorted out, as Mwali warned the defiant Maselekwane that the council was getting restless, reminding the queen that it is her responsibility to ensure that the line of female queens continues. The following day, the queen called a royal council meeting where she announced to the council that she will select a partner to lay with when the time to conceive a new heir comes. The queen then introduced the council to her multiple royal wives. Most of the council looked impressed, but Mudiga was outraged. The episode ends with him walking out of the royal council as the queen wished him well. Episode 9 picks up following an 18-year time jump as the community began to question whether the queen will ever be able to produce an heir. Meanwhile, at the river, the queen and her wives encountered a stranger who turned out to be one of her cousins. The queen invited him to her quarters, where she informed him that he had been chosen to help her conceive the next Rain Queen. The following day, the queen received special visitors, messengers from the Zulu Kingdom, with Shaka sending gifts to the queen in return for favorable rainfall. However, the gathering was interrupted when the queen was informed that the old and weak Kadikolo was found unconscious in her compound. A deteriorating Kadikolo asked to see Dzugudini. The queen and Dabedi set out to find Dzugudini, but upon finding her, a confrontation ensued where Dzugudini threatened to kill Maselekwane and refused to come with them. However, Dzugudini was bitten by a snake whilst being cared for by the queen. Dzugudini told a shocked Maselekwane about her conception, revealing that they have the same father. The following day, Maselekwane and Dabedi returned home with Dzugudini, who got an angry reception from the community. The episode ends with Raisibe revealing to the heartbroken queen that Kadikolo was no more. Episode 10 picks up following the death of Kadikolo. The community mourned for the fallen Khadi, with preparations for her funeral underway as speculation of who will succeed her began to grow. A royal council meeting was called where the members put pressure on the queen to announce a new Khadi. However, the queen was not easily influenced and cautioned the council against meddling in royal family affairs. Kadikolo's funeral followed as Maselekwane continued to struggle with the loss of her aunt. After the funeral, the royal council convened, where Maselekwane announced that Dzugudini will be pardoned for her crimes and allowed to return home like Kadikolo wanted. The royal council once again pushed the queen to make an announcement on the new Kgadikgolo, and to their dismay, the queen announced that Keale will be the new Kgadikgolo. However, Dzugudini was not pleased to hear this and confronted her daughter for disregarding customs to pass her up for the role. An angry Dzugudini threatened Maselekwane once again, vowing to make her regret her decision as Dabedi ushered her away. Dzugudini then came across Mudiga's son, Matome, who revealed that his family had fallen on hard times since his father resigned from his position and renounced the queen. Upon hearing this news, Dzugudini started plotting with Mudiga's son. She then returned to the Bapedi, where Khosi Mampuru once again gave her refuge. Meanwhile, the Balobedu held a ritual ceremony for the new Kgadikgolo, which was interrupted by a blazing fire which had the Lovedu people scrambling to put it out. Dabedu was able to catch the arsonist, which turned out to be Matome, who was acting on Dzugudini's orders. After hearing of Matome's capture, Dzugudini implored King Mampuru to launch an attack on the Balobedu, but he resisted, forcing an impatient Dzugudini to storm off. After the fire, an angry Maselekwane went to the ancestral caves, sharing that Dzugudini had gone too far. The episode ends with the queen pleading with the ancestors to take Dzugudini's life. Episode 11 picks up with the restless Maselekwane once again visiting the ancestral caves, but sinister forces are at play. Tibule, the sorcerer that Dzugudini had made a pact with, used her powers to disrupt the queen's connection to the spirits. She struggled to summon the ancestors and asked what she had done to offend them. Meanwhile, back at the village, a royal council meeting was called after an army assembled by Dzugudini was sighted marching towards the village. The royal council rallied together, declaring that they will defeat Dzugudini in the name of the queen. Word quickly arrived to the Bapedi of Dzugudini's latest efforts to wrestle the throne from her daughter. Despite being advised to join Dzugudini in her efforts, King Mampuru once again resisted deploying his army, as he recalled that the Rain Queen once rejected his proposal for marriage. As fear spread through the kingdom and no rainfall for a while, the community began to lose faith in their queen, who was visited by the spirits of her deceased father Mambo and the late Kgadikgolo. Mambo Mukodo's spirit condemned her for not killing Dzugudini when she had the chance. However, Kgadikgolo's spirit pleaded with Maselekwane to avoid violence and instead use the powers bestowed upon her by the ancestors to save her people. The following day, Maselekwane climbed the mountain in a final attempt to summon the rain and save her kingdom. As she reached the mountain, Tibule's dark magic intervened once again as the queen was sucked into the ground and disappeared in front of her subjects. Episode 12 picks up following Maselekwane's mysterious disappearance. The queen emerged from a body of water to find that it was raining. However, she was not the one that had made it rain. Mwali appeared to her with a warning that the ancestors did not bring the rain, and it soon revealed to be an illusion conjured by Dzugudini's sorcerer, Tibule. Dzugudini and her army continued to march towards the village as the Lovedu people prepared for war. However, Maselekwane tried to intervene. Masquerading as the queen's messenger, she reminded her people that they are a peaceful nation, but the Lovedu people were desperate to defend themselves or surrender if the queen could not protect them. As Dzugudini's army approached, the Lovedu people made plans, setting tree branches on fire as the queen went up to the mountain with her closest subjects to call for rain. As the queen performed her ritual, heavy rain began to fall, striking fear in the heart of Dzugudini's army. However, they continued to march on, but could not see where they were going due to the heavy rain and smoke coming from the lit bushes. Dzugudini and her army aimlessly fell into the flooded river. She begged Tibule to save her, but he refused, leaving Dzugudini to drown. A month after Dzugudini's army was defeated without any weapon being raised, Maselekwane gave birth to her heir and the next Rain Queen, Masalanabo. The episode ends with a reminder of Mambo's prophecy, suggesting that the threat to the Lovedu Kingdom is not yet over.